Are you ready for a show that talks sports from the fans' point of view?
We've seen Michael Jordan score 37 points a game in his era. How many could he score in today's NBA?
There's not a player out there who I'd rather have than LeBron James.
Are you ready for a show that isn't afraid to challenge anyone when it comes to sports? If Adam Silver really wanted to fix tanking in the NBA, he would stop rewarding teams by giving them the best chance to win the draft lottery.
I mean, how many times will Roger Goodell drop the ball on handling domestic violence in the NFL?
Look, athletes have every right to talk politics, but if the fans stop tuning in, that's their right.
Then you're ready for Talk Back, a podcast where two fans debate the media narrative and discuss the world of sports as we see it.
Welcome to the show.
It's time for another edition of Talk Back. I'm one of your hosts, Eric Nesbit, and with me as always is your host and director of content, Justin Gay, lining us up with the NFL right out of the gates. We've got the AFC. The Patriots could be in a little bit of trouble, and the Ravens are hot. So we'll hit up that AFC to open the show. Then we've got to talk about the NFC. Last week's episode was titled NFC Deceased, and there was a reason for that. We actually recorded that podcast prior to both Dallas and Philadelphia losing, and it doesn't seem like anybody wants to win in the NFC East. We'll talk about them as well as what's going on with the Niners, the Seahawks, and other good teams in the NFC. Bringing it home could be a little bit difficult. We want to talk to Justin about why the ratings are down, what is having an effect on the NBA this season, especially with a lot of good stories going on. That's up ahead right here on episode 312 of Talk Back.
Well, we spent a lot of time last week talking about the NFC, specifically the NFC East, and how it is a disaster. Well, Eric, I think now we need to turn our attentions to the AFC, specifically the team that has been at the top of the AFC all the way up until this past weekend when they lost that spot to the red-hot Baltimore Ravens. And that is what happened to the New England Patriots on Sunday night. So, Eric, the Texans really put it on the Patriots. The score was not indicative of how that game really was going throughout. The Patriots got a couple cheap touchdowns late, had a chance to grab an onside kick and really make things interesting. But that at one point was a 3-score game. The Patriots offense looks stuck in the mud. Typically, Eric, we see this stuff with the Patriots early on. They'll have a bad September loss, have an early October loss that just doesn't look good. Everybody throws out the warning signs. The panic alarms go off, and then they turn it around and just whoop people in November and December. Now we're starting to see this team. They didn't look great in Philly, didn't look great against Dallas, and they sure didn't look good against Houston. So what is going on with the Patriots, Eric? How much trouble are they in? Are we overreacting, or is this team going to get it turned around as they normally do?
Yeah, with the Patriots, it's always a good discussion because you never really know what kind of problems they're having. And on the surface, like you talked about, we do see these types of games from the Patriots throughout the season. A lot of times it's early on. They might grab a loss to the Dolphins or even, run a tough game with my Jets or something like that. And that's typical out of the AFC East, although it's never any question as to whether or not the Patriots will end up winning that division. And I don't think, we might talk about the Bills here in a minute, and certainly they're having a good season, but I don't think there's any question that the Patriots are still going to win the AFC East. But as it relates to this game, as it relates to their season from a whole, I do think there are some cracks in the armor. We talked several weeks ago about the fact that everyone was so excited about their defense. And I think, Justin, you mentioned several times that right here on this show, we were nervous, even two guys sitting in a studio outside of the world of ESPN in their fancy studios, that the Patriots defense may be not quite as good as everyone was thinking. Their first 6 games were certainly very easy. What was going on? Now you get into the later parts of the season. What are we really working with? And the Houston Texans, albeit the AFC South isn't a division that's exactly on fire, the Texans have the most firepower out of any of those teams. And so you're starting to see the Patriots play these teams that really on paper should be good teams. And you're right. This game, outside of, James White coming alive in the second half, and of course, Brady's security blanket with Julian Edelman, Sony Michel's not doing a whole lot. You've got a lot of other wide receivers that really aren't doing a whole lot. Their rookie, Keneal Harry caught a touchdown the week before. And then last week with the Texans was like a ghost. I don't know where he was. So it just seems like the Patriots are so discombobulated, and yet they're 10-2, that to me, Justin, I'm not sure what to make of this. All of that is to say that you're exactly right. We see these down games. We see these times where they'll win a lot of games and then lose here and there. And I think that's just the parody of the NFL. But something might seem a little bit different to me this year. And maybe that's just in the back of my mind. I know that Brady's older. I know that there's really no tight end game to speak of without Gronk there. Certainly not what they've had in the past decade with Aaron Hernandez, then Gronk, and what we would recognize from the Patriots out of the tight end position. Their running game is just dink and dunk. You don't know if it's going to be White, if it's going to be Michel, if it's going to be a little mix of Burkhead. Certainly nothing strong there. And then as we just said, that their wide receiver game is a little bit of a mess. So Justin, I do feel like there's more here to be worried about than just, the Patriots lose one here and there due to the parity in the NFL. I think, especially as we're going to talk here in a minute about some of the teams that are on the rise in the AFC, like the Ravens, this could be a season where they don't get as far as maybe they had thought they would as we lined up in week one.
Well, the Patriots have a history of making people look really dumb with their takes when they have those losses and they count them out and they just continue to find ways to win. But a lot of those takes go too far because they start saying, oh, Brady's too old. Like, everybody wants to be on top. They want to be the first to say something, and they want to get it. They want to be the first to be able to say, oh, Brady's over the hill. Yeah. He's done. And then it backfires on them. So I don't even think we have to go there. But I think, like you said, there are so many cracks on this team that you start to wonder, are they going to be able to fill all this against the upper echelon teams? And Eric, their schedule is not even that difficult. They're in the toughest stretch that they're going through. And really, that was when it started with the Ravens and when Baltimore took them out by 17. And then they turn around and they play an Eagles team that just lost to Miami. And then they're playing a Cowboys team that we've talked about needing to fire their coach and how bad they're playing. And they go get slaughtered at home on Thanksgiving by a Buffalo team. And then they're playing the Texans, a team who people still don't want to give credit to, that they can win the AFC South. That, well, maybe Tennessee can jump up there. They've got 2 games left with them. They're an up and down team. And now they have a Chiefs team that hasn't played all that great. They're not coming in here as the Chiefs last year. And then you look at their schedule, they get the Bengals, they get the Bills, and they get Miami again. So they have just not played that great.
It should be 2-1 at worst, right? That stretch there should be 2-1 at worst.
And I really think that the early season schedule, playing all those bad teams, the Jets twice when they were having all their quarterback issues at the time, catching Miami, playing the Giants on that Thursday night game and one of Daniel Jones' first starts, playing Washington, it just made this team look a lot better. And I do think their defense is good, but I think that they were a unit that was vastly, vastly overrated based on their competition. And you saw when they got in a game with Lamar, and who knows how vanilla Belichick was, if he was really showing all his cards, but they still got 37 points dropped on them. And Houston came out and dropped 28 on them. So that defense has some flaws in it. And now the offense has major flaws in it because you pointed out a lot of those things. And I think if you look back on, even if you just look on some of the Twitter threads with N'Keal Harry, how badly he is struggling to get separation. It is awful. And it's a problem back to Arizona State, where some of the similar routes where the corners just sit on it and he cannot get separation. And Eric Brady's struggling as well. He had as much time by the numbers as he's had really throughout the last few years on Sunday night, and he did not look good. Very inaccurate with the football.
Really didn't. You're right.
And you can tell he doesn't want to get hit. You can tell he understands how old he is and that he cannot take that kind of a beating. So, Eric, this team's got a lot of issues, and it all keeps coming back to your buddy, your Twitter friend that you seem to like to try to rile up in Antonio Brown. This team really seems like they need him. Do you think organizationally, it seems like Kraft does not want anything to do with Antonio Brown, but sure seems like, again, we are hundreds of miles away and we are not inside that bubble, but it sure seems like Tom Brady behind the scenes would really like them to explore this Antonio Brown situation a little further because they are desperate for weapons on this team.
Well, for sure. And they only had him for one game, and he looked decent in that game, even without a full week of practice and looking at the playbooks. I mean, he did that based on his talent alone, which, look, I hate the guy. Okay, I won't say that. I shouldn't say I hate the guy. I hate who he is and who he represents himself to be. But talent wise, I'm not going to sit here and say that the guy's not a talented wide receiver and that Brady wouldn't want to have him. You saw what he did in one game with the Patriots. Now, what's interesting to me is that, kind of to your point, is there any way that they reunite in some way? Because they dropped him. And if you look at it, Justin, nothing has really happened with him or the league or anything outside of him being a jackass on social media. He's in, he's out, he's in, he's out. He never wants to play again. Now he wants to play again. Now he's never going to play in the NFL again. Oh, now he's sorry. Look, that's just AB and that's who he is. But nothing has really happened publicly with any of the lawsuits or any of the teams, so it's like if this guy slides back in, I even heard a rumor that Dallas could pick him up for the playoffs. I would think that it's possible now that some team slides him back in, and maybe that team is the Patriots due to what you just said. I mean, Tom Brady had 326 yards the other night against the Texans, but his QBR was less than 30. You have to dig in and look at the numbers, and you're right, Justin. He just didn't look good.
No, and I think that's where, look, I don't know if he's ever going to put on a Patriot uniform again, but it definitely seems like all of the rumors and everything you hear is Brady really would like him on this team. And even the one game they had, it's not so much that AB is going to come back and be this dominant presence. It's that teams now have to account for him. You saw what the Texans did last Sunday night when they were double teaming Edelman. They didn't have anybody else that could beat them. There was nobody else that scared them. You're not scared of Sanu. He's a possession guy. You've got the young guys in Myers and Harry. Brady clearly doesn't trust those guys. And then it's James White because they don't trust Sony Michel in the pass game. And so that is the limitation on weapons of this team. And then you start to wonder, okay, what was Josh Gordon? What did he have going on that they felt the need just to get rid of him as well? Because a team that's that devoid of weapons, you lose Gronkowski. You've got you really don't have a developed tight end. You lose your fullback. You just don't have a great run game. They got a piece back on the offensive line. Clearly it did well for Brady, but the receivers weren't getting any separation for him. So
Demaryius Thomas, Philip Dorsett, none of these guys are working there.
No, I mean, and they let Demaryius go, which is a whole screwed up situation where they could have had him. He waited around for him. Then they waive him and he ends up on the Jets. So they've made a lot of mistakes and error. I mean, and look, they've tried to draft for the wide receiver position and they've drafted for the running back and they've spent firsts and seconds on those positions. And it doesn't seem like, Eric, that they've had the success that a team like, say, Baltimore has been able to have when you look at the weapons that they've put around Lamar Jackson and the ability to go out in free agency and get a guy like Ingram. But then in the draft, you draft the tight ends, you draft Brown, you put the right pieces around him. And now all of a sudden the Patriots are looking up at the Baltimore Ravens. So Eric, the Ravens take over now as the number one seed in the AFC. They are flat dominating people. Now San Francisco was able to, and you don't know how much the weather impacted that as well, but San Francisco did come in. It seemed like they blunted Lamar a bit from what he did Monday night a few weeks ago versus the Rams to what he did this past Sunday versus the Niners. But what the Ravens are doing, do you feel that they are going to be able to sustain this kind of dominance? Because when you fast forward to the playoffs this coming week, week 14, they have a matchup with the Bills. That means that going into the playoffs, the Ravens this year will have played the Patriots, the Chiefs, the Texans, and the Bills. So and potentially the Steelers 2 times. So all of the potential AFC playoff teams, the Ravens are going to already have played. They're going to have already got a taste of Lamar Jackson. Do you feel like they will be able to overcome what they struggled with last year when they played the Chargers twice? Do you feel like this team is different now?
I do. I really do. And I may have not have said that 6 weeks ago. But to me, over the past couple of weeks, watching Lamar Jackson, especially, some of those games that they've had recently, like the Rams game, I think to me is what made me turn the corner because it's not just that the Ravens as a unit, as a team, as a defense, etc., played better than the Rams. They did in a lot of facets. I mean, defensively, holding the Rams to 6 points, as I recall, was fantastic. But if you look at that game and that you're just simply doing the eye test, and I know you and I were watching that game